Hi, my name is Marielle Anzalone, and today we're going for a walk in the woods. We're in Corson's Brook Woods in Staten Island, and there are lots of really beautiful spring ephemerals here. So we thought we would walk around the forest and show you some cool plants that are in flower now. One thing that we have is trout lily. If you can kind of take a look around and see how extensive this particular patch is. A lot of people have this idea that trees are very old, and of course they can be, but small little wildflowers can also be really old. This particular patch could be hundreds of years old. These plants are colonial and kind of grow out as they grow older. So this one patch could all be one single organism. So on some of these trout lilies, the anthers are different colors. The anthers are the male parts and they're tan. So we're gonna look and see if we can find one with another color on it. The anthers on this one are yellow, as you can see the male parts around the edge. That's just a way that you can note that there is a lot of genetic diversity in the population when the anthers are different colors. This plant also has really pretty mottled leaves. Sometimes the leaves have a little bit of white in them, sometimes it's a little bit of purple, and that's why it's called trout lily, because people felt that the leaves were the same shape and coloration as trout. This plant here is called Spring Beauty. Spring Beauty is another one of our spring wildflowers that has a really short time frame. All of our spring ephemerals, they're called ephemeral because they don't last very long, but it's important that they photosynthesize a lot so that they're able to store energy reserves in their rootstock, and that is the piece that overwinters. So by the time the middle of June comes around, these plants will be totally gone and you'll have no idea that they were ever here. This particular patch is a patch of skunk cabbage, and skunk cabbage is a really cool plant because it flowers very early. You can find it in flower as early as January. Typically the flowers are out in March, and unfortunately now that it's April the flowers are all gone and you can just see the big leafy vegetation that's left. But skunk cabbage is called skunk cabbage because the leaves smell, they're pretty stinky. This spring wildflower is called Allium trichocum, which is ramps or wild leeks. And this is a delicacy. You'll find this being sold at Union Square Green Market, but it also grows wild in New York City. And the really interesting thing about this plant is that the flowers come up after the leaves disappear. So the only thing we have to see from the flower right now is the old flowering stalks from last year. This is another patch of Spring Beauties, Claytonia virginica. And you can see that there's a little native bee that's pollinating the flowers right now. It's kind of going in there and buzzing about. So that's what's really nice about spring ephemerals, is that they come out early enough for the native pollinators to come and get their pollen and their food. So this particular plant is really interesting because it's rare in New York City. It's only known from a couple of different populations in the 5 boroughs. It's called Verastrum viridi, which is false hellebore. This shrub is called spicebush, and it's called spicebush because the leaves have a really nice lemony fragrance to them. It's one of the first flowers of spring, and people think of wildflowers as being little things on the ground, but shrubs are flowering plants too, or at least they can be. It's a fun thing to see in really early spring, and it reminds you that all that greenery of spring is right around the corner. So that's the end of our botanical walk. Thanks for coming out with me. And as you might have noticed, there were some things that were in flower, but some things that weren't quite in flower. And in fact, that's the fun of doing a botanical walk, is that you never know what kind of surprises you'll find. And nature is unpredictable, so it's good to come back for return visits, and over time you see the changes in the nature that's around you, and it's how you get to know your foliar neighbors and learn about your local environment. Another way you can get to see more wildflowers is by coming out for some of our botanical walks for New York City Wildflower Week. New York City Wildflower Week is coming up in about 10 days, and there will be lots of wildflowers to look at and lots of fun plants to get to know. So come join us for some of our walks during Wildflower Week, May 2 through 9, 2009.